Not having a dad hurt, and it left a gaping big hole in my life. It's big smile. It's probably one of the only smiles I'll give you during this podcast. Welcome back. Inspired Conversations with Craig. And I will say, folks, this is an inspired conversation we're going to have. And I tell you, it's one surely that is not happening enough. The first in a series on fatherlessness, growing up without a dad, real and raw, my personal take, my personal story, my personal perspective. There is a lot of fatherlessness out there, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of people talking about it. Yet from my perspective, I tell you, it reaches into the very core of the many challenges we face as individuals, as men, as women, as families, and as a society. You'll find Jordan Peterson in a video on YouTube talking to an audience about the subject. He offers a very scathing insight into the consequences of not having a father, but there just doesn't seem to be anything real and personal, and I get it. It's hard to do. I've procrastinated putting this series together for some time. I kind of realize in doing so, I'm here admitting to you all, to the world, that I've felt damage for a big part of my life, and that not having a father profoundly affected me. But on the other flip of the coin, you know what? I'm at a time in my life where I'm okay with it. I've come to own it, to kind of stare it down by the horns, and I know in my heart this is a topic that desperately needs to come to the surface for so many. So it's my intention through this series on fatherlessness to reflect on my life growing up without a dad, and offer some personal insight and some context as to what it's really like not to have a dude present in your life that you just innately know as dad. Sometimes refer maybe as pops, perhaps even as time rolls on and the years go by, call him the old fella. What it's like just not to have that. I hope that if you're a guy watching this, dealing with the thoughts and the emotions I cover in this series, that your big takeaway is that you know you aren't alone in this, that you're not odd, that it's completely okay for you to be feeling these things as well. That I even put you in great stead for even taking the time to watch this podcast and explore the subject. It shows you have a capacity to lay your biases and defense mechanisms to the side for just a moment and introspectively kind of navigate this complex thing with me. I also know there's going to be some mums that watch this that are worried about their sons, perhaps even feel an element of guilt that their boys are growing up without their father in their lives. And to you as well, I hope I can offer some perspective and maybe even some constructive things you might be able to do to support him through his life. Now, to offer these insights from a personal perspective, I decided to work through a framework of 8 personality traits that are associated with fatherless men. And now I will link the traits in the description below, and over 8 podcasts, I will cover each of them, reflecting honestly, without any on my life, and offering my unique perspective. I'm sure along the way I'll manage to get a guest to come on the show and share their insights and perspectives as well. And I welcome your comments. Let's talk about it. Let's enter into a discussion about it. And if you find my content helpful, do us a favor, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's go on this journey of 8 together. I know we are all different. Some guys that grow up without a father may watch this and say, mate, I didn't face any of the challenges that you're talking about. And then again, some may resonate entirely with what I'm saying. I know my closest mate, my closest friend in this world, Daniel, he lost his father when he was just a boy. And I tell you, he's gone on to just be this outstanding father of 3 beautiful kids, and has this air of wisdom about him that I just have a deep respect for. And I think that is the great beauty of life, guys. No one in two's experience will ever be the same, and through adversity, we all respond differently. And the thing is, it's all very valid and very much okay. I believe we have each got our own lessons to learn. Some of us may be further along than others in their quest of discovery and integrating these life's lessons. I'll get to the first personality trait shortly, but I thought, well, it's probably entirely appropriate to give you some background as to who Craig is, what my lens into this is, where I'm at on the journey, and I'll tell you a little bit about this guy that I never got to meet. Now, I'm 39 years of age. I'm about to hit 40. I live in Auckland, down here in little old New Zealand, and I have a pretty sweet life with lots of stuff for which I am eternally grateful for, and give thanks for. I'll tear up when I say this, but I'm married to the most wonderful lady. I hope she won't mind. I'm going to put a picture up of her. Here she is, Leanne. I am so proud to call this woman my wife. I've got the most amazing stepson, Ethan. We call him E-Talk. This kid is like amazing. He's in his early 20s. He's recently fled the nest, and he's just this great young man. And I just feel so blessed to have been in his life since he was a kid. We've got 2 dogs. I absolutely love them to bits. The oldest boy, Ollie, he's sitting over there. He's listening in. He's just the most chill, loyal companion. And Harper, she's a wonderfully affectionate animal as well. I've got a real soft spot for animals. And look, whilst my life is wonderful on one level, on another level, guys, it has been tough. I never met my dad, Ted Churchill Stewart. Here's a picture of him. People have told me, look, I look just like him. My whole life, people have told me this, and I guess I do. For the most part, I never took much interest in learning more about him or looking at these pictures with any real sincerity until recently. He's the guy I didn't know and the guy I didn't know that I needed. He's my dad. Now, my parents, Ted and Glenys, were living in Papua New Guinea with my 2 sisters when I was conceived back in 1981. They moved back to Auckland partway through the pregnancy in 1982, purchased a new home in Papakura, and my dad fell sick, Hep B. He died shortly after in July 25th, 1982. I came into the world a month later, August 31st, 1982. We missed each other by around 30 days. Again, it's only recently that I've been able to see that I was absolutely robbed. It was a tough blow. Folks, it's a cruel world. My mother, Glenys, here she is, 2 ends, absolutely stunning lady. She raised my sisters and I well, and by God, we put her through a whole lot of shit over the years as we struggled both together and individually through the aftershock of our loss. Me being blind and shielded from most of it all. And I know my sisters endured it. They were they were only kids when Dad died. She was a hardworking and very caring lady. Our mother, she was a good daughter, very loyal daughter, and a great friend. She had all the right values. That lady, she always did the right thing. You wouldn't find a woman with a stronger work ethic or moral compass than my mother. She always did the right thing. And she spent most of her life after my father died just committed to her church and to her passion for early childhood education, putting in over 25 years at her kindergarten. I can tell you, as we get deeper into the dynamic with my mum, as we progress through the series, she did her absolute best with the harsh hand that she was dealt. Now, Mum passed in 2013, so after a reasonably long struggle with melanoma, and the kicker is, guys, is that I never got to cry with her and more than stuff we're going to talk about. And not only did I lose a dad, but she lost a lover and her best friend, and it's only in recent years that I've been really able to glimpse what that tragedy really did to her, how it affected her trajectory in life, and how that deep-seated pain that she carried not only affected myself but my sisters and my wider family, in fact, in ways that I guess we've never really spoken about nor understood. People talk a lot recently about intergenerational trauma. There's a great book, I'll put it up on the screen here for you now, and I'll link it in the comments, by Mark Wallen. It Didn't Start With You, it's called. It didn't start with me, it didn't start with you, it would be one of the two. That covers this subject really, really nicely. And after reading that book, the inspired but crazy epigenetics videos by Dr. Bruce Lipton made a heck of a lot more sense. And you can't help but wonder how far back, generationally speaking, your trauma may be seated. I know that my father's life, based on what I know, was just as fraught with challenge as mine has been, just spun with a different dynamic. He was one of 5 boys, and his father, my grandfather, was by all accounts, a hopeless, stressed alcoholic whom left the family when my father was just a boy. I know my dad was close-knit with his brothers, and I know that his death rocked their lives as well, with just this bitter melancholy and a bitter sadness. And I believe, those guys, it's hard to talk about because these guys are at the end of, the ones that are still with us are at the end of their lives, and they've done well. But I can tell you, they'll go to their respective graves never having fully resolved their grief. I won't edit it out. There's no point. It is what it is. It's just it's incredibly sad. And as Mark Wallen so perfectly and succinctly outlines in his book, the consequences. It's okay. The consequences of that grief just don't stop with him. It intertwines with their children and their children's children, and so it goes on. You got to read the book. It's important reading for the person that's traveling down this road. Good on you, Mark. It's good work. I want to say at this point, I just want to say, if you've followed my podcasts, you'll know I've spoken at length regarding two other topics related to human health, physiology and biology, vitamin D and breathlessness. My background into these topics were challenges with my own health, and I want to say at the offset, these two seemingly unrelated things are not isolated from what we're going to cover in this series on fatherlessness. It is profound that these topics, they are 100% interrelated. Everything is. There is not one thing that exists in this duality that we call life that exists in isolation. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, growing up without Ted in my life and the circumstances around his death and my birth, those series of events have shaped my developing psychology, and through the mechanism of breath, my physiology and health outcomes. Now I'm a little further down the path of this great journey of life. Just bear with me and allow me to flesh that out a little more. I'm coming to the first affirmation, but we've got to move through this stuff. What you think over time, what you think over time and distance affects the way in which you breathe, which ultimately impacts the autonomic balance of your physiology. Look, living a life with a dominant sympathetic tone is like spending your life living in fear of a fight that never arrives. It's tiring, and it will cost you your health, no matter how good your diet, no matter how impressive your exercise regime. The mind, it interprets reality, and the breath, it truly becomes your very own biological percussion instrument. Biological percussion instrument, your life instrument. The strum and beat of which it's determined by your view of reality. As simple and as eloquent as those words may sound, shockingly, no one tells you about this, and very few are talking about it. James Nestor's Breath, it's up on the screen, it's a book, you've got to read it. Patrick McEwen's Oxygen Advantage. And I've got a podcast scheduled with Roger Price, the godfather of airway physiology, where I'm sure he will explain this innate biological process better than I can through the emotion and through the tears. I'm sure there's going to be some more tears and some bad language covering this topic. I am sure through these tears and some more bad language, if you stick with me on this topic of fatherlessness, you're going to begin to see that the pillars of optimal health aren't just your traditional nutrition, eating well, exercising, and living the active lifestyles that we're told about. The human body just isn't as mechanistic as this bottom-up, top-down reductionist view of our physiology. It's just so much more complex than that. There are other pillars that constitute human health that we're really only beginning to peel back the layers of the onion with, to scratch the surface of. The way we breathe, our level of the sunshine hormone D, the circumstance and structure of our early lives. These pillars equally and profoundly influence our lives' trajectories, and in my view, are intimately related to the emotional, physical, and health-related challenges I have faced most recently in this grand journey. I also want to say that not only have I arrived at a time in my life where I realize all this stuff, but more than that, I'm in a time in life where I'm willing and able now to confront, I guess, what I haven't been able to all these years, that not having a dad hurt, and it left a gaping big hole in my life that I wasn't prepared to admit was there. Yet being fatherless was never far from my thoughts. It literally manifested itself in every single aspect of my day-to-day life. It's an inescapable adversary. Is what bothered me about it. And when I cast my mind back, I think of times as a child we'd go away on holiday camping in a place called the Coromandel Peninsula with other family friends, and I'd see the other kids and their dads and just yearn for the same, yet not know how to communicate those feelings of desire, of want, of inadequacy. Instead, I held on to them, allowing them to weigh on me progressively as the years rolled on by. I recall my next door neighbour, Jonathan. He's my best friend for many years. Good dude. And well into our teens, we were friends. And I just remember being so jealous of the relationship he enjoyed with John Sr. He was a good man, John Sr. And I yearned for the same. I idolised him as I did many of the good men in my life. Yet again, those emotions were just left to gain momentum under the surface, rather than being openly discussed, like it was my own shame. Like I felt the burden of my own inadequacy and my own circumstances was mine to carry forward and work out alone. And when my mum attempted to tell me more stories about my father, what it was like, I'd shut down. I don't know if you do the same. I thought that I didn't want to know. So stupid, but really I think I just didn't want her to see or know my pain. Like I wanted to keep that tucked away and out of view. That not knowing him really did affect me. And at the same time, I think I told myself it just wasn't important. Like, what difference did it make? The guy's dead. I don't know him. I'm never going to get to fucking know him. So, what's the point telling me about him? Yet secretly, guys, all I wanted was to know literally everything about him. Yet my pain and my shame prevented me from having those conversations as they came up in the family home. My sisters didn't really talk about him to me. My father, he was a stranger to me. So how could a dude I've never met cause me so much pain and so much confusion growing up? I can look back now and go, fuck, mate, it wasn't your fault. You're completely fine. You're a good boy. You can do it. Part of me has a bit of anger at the dude as well. Like, Ted, why did you have to fuck off to Papua New Guinea on some crazy adventure with your young family, get sick and die? Why couldn't you have been more sensible of what if you're still alive? I know my sister plays this game in her head as well. And what if? It's a cat and mouse game, guys. You'll never win, and it serves no purpose. It's kind of like a baby bird in a nest waiting for his parents who've been run over and can't return, alone and confused. Again, it's a cruel but very beautiful world. How, as a kid, are you even supposed to make sense of that stuff? Look, I'm not an angry or a violent dude. I get shitty. don't get me wrong, but I seldom lose self-control, and I don't take many risks, and we'll get to those traits later. As a drug user for so many years, I never allowed myself to hit rock bottom. I was too calculating to allow that to happen, which when you think of it, kind of fucking really sucks, because if I'd hit rock bottom, I probably would have turned my life around sooner than I did. I think I've been in like 3 fights my whole life. Like only one of them, I think I started. But I recall growing up so angry with my mum that she wasn't tougher. I think I blamed her for my fear of confrontation and standing up for myself. Innately, I craved authority, yet I was expecting it from someone that just wasn't biologically engineered to offer that to me, to give it. And I carry a lot of shame in and around the way I disrespected my mother in my teenage years. By lacking a figure to reinforce our family values in a more dominant way, I never heard the firm baritone voice cautioning my lack of respect. I never felt challenged by the authority asserted by a male that I adored and that I respected. And towards the latter part of my teenage years, I became really acutely aware of this. Like I knew it. It was at that stage that I quickly spiraled into drug use, and I just developed this tendency to throw myself into my work, like just work, drugs, just to keep it simple, to live life on fast forward. The years just whoosh, whoosh, wasted. I just remember feeling really numb through those years, allowing those skeletons to accumulate that had begun to form my closet from those early years of just feeling inadequate, like I was different. Never really did I stop to allow the opportunity to work through the emotions from which I continually sought to run away from. How many of us are walking around with these empty ghosts from our pasts, seeking fulfillment in these worldly things? But as you know, you'll never find them. You never find real satisfaction. I realized I could have spent my whole life doing this, even the next one, and never arrived at that place which I was seeking. And how familiar is this to you? It's one of life's primary challenges. Stop expecting, start enjoying. Because I tell you what, you're totally fucked if you set your expectations too high. So you've got some insight, guys, into who I am, and let's move on talking about this first character trait of 8, the character traits of fatherless men. And the traits I've selected succinctly summarize the many resources I've read on this subject. I've gone down the rabbit hole of the writings of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung to the modern day preachings of Christian pastors. The same resonant ideas keep coming forward, and so here we are. Up on screen, it is character trait number 1 that we're going to talk about. There is an insecurity or a sense of inferiority. I can't even say that at this stage. Let's have another go. There is an insecurity or inferiority. Try and do that yourself. I don't know what's happening there. There is an insecurity or inferiority because of neglect. lack of affirmation or abandonment. Some men continually walk around with insecurities that negatively impact the way they relate in business, ministry, and marriage. They never really trust their abilities, and hence they don't always trust others around them to do the right thing by them. This sense of inferiority, there we go again, causes them to try and hide their low self-esteem by projecting machismo. And I'll put the definition of that word. It's a nice selection of words this pastor used, but anyway, a machismo persona full of confidence, but inside their souls are always afraid. So let's go down the rabbit hole and sincerely talk about this. Do I have a sense of insecurity or feelings of inferiority that I can attribute to growing up without a dad? Folks, absolutely. My earlier comments about going away on family camping trips and feeling like the odd one out, going on the jet ski with my I had to go with my friend's dad instead of taking my own dad, and to the random harmless questions you might get asked as a kid. What does your dad do for a living, son? What's a kid supposed to say? Well, actually, Thelma, he went ahead and died on us, or dude was an alcoholic, so mum threw him out. I don't know him, and I don't know what it's like to have a dad. That's what I wanted to say, but you just these situations arise, and you just feel so awkward, and it gets brought to your attention, and you don't vocalize it, you internalize it, and down the rabbit hole you spiral. Whatever the case may be, I definitely felt like I was missing out and was the odd one out in situations where not having a father was at times brought to the forefront of my attention. Times in between, it just sat there like a splinter in my mind, and I felt it from others as well. As a kid growing up, hell, I even got a scholarship to attend a prestigious school, a boys' school here in Auckland, all because of vice principal. When my mum took me to the interview there, he was a man of great mana and great moral compass. Saw both promise in my sporting abilities, but I could just tell through the way he looked at me that he felt sorry for my predicament. A growing lad at home, being raised by his mother with no male presence in the home. And that sympathy is the unspoken word I received throughout my childhood from family and from friends. They didn't need to say anything, but I always felt their sympathy for my mum's loss of her companion and my unfortunate situation of being brought up in a home without a father. And again, it just it added to this feeling of inadequacy, like poor kid, lost his dad, but must be hard. Yet the hard thing is that no one ever said, like, it would have been different if Mr. McKinley was his name, that deputy principal, if he had said, son, I know how hard it must be not to have your dad around now. Your mum told me he died, and I just want to let you know you're doing okay. And if you need to talk to me about how you're feeling, that would have been really fucking nice. That would have been nice. Rather than carrying it, lack, I just mentioned a word there, was lack of affirmation, and it's in the character trait. Affirmation is massive. I don't think our modern society actually realizes how massive affirmation really is. Like, if you're just going to let's just take a simple childhood experience of hopping on a bike for the first time. One might imagine a typical parental response to having their first topple and crash right there on the front lawn. You can hear mum right now. It's okay, sweetie. Come here, mummy's got you. It's that sense of nurture and the safety of running into mother's arms that just makes it all okay. Equally, you can probably picture a father's response upon seeing no bones broken and no skin has been bruised. It's okay, son. Good work. You can do this. I believe in you. Let's give it another crack. Get back on that bike. And he rears him behind, balancing that bike, giving it another push, watches him fall off again. That's dad's territory right there. Dad's territory. You cannot get that from the maternal influence. That's the affirmation I never received right there, right throughout the various stages and ages of development. The consistent number one person that is just keen to offer words of encouragement, and the unspoken word as well, just by presence alone, offers just this knowing and the sense of security that everything's going to be okay, that everything is as it should be, everything is in its place, and there's a place for everything. And as much as, like I said, as much as your mother can smother you with love, the power of belief and offering affirmation through encouragement is just this golden quality I associate with fathership. Sticking with the same analogy, it's that careful yin and yang mix of parental influence with both maternal and paternal tones that offer one a depth and range of emotional experience to be able to ride the bike effectively. If the wheels come off, as they often do, translate the parallel teachings of one's parents to formulate a well-rounded response to the challenge. As I look at some of the interests I've had in my life, and there have been many, I don't think my level of stick-with-itness and tenacity to deal with failure would have been so damning and rich in self-loathing if I'd experienced more positive affirmation from having a present and active father in my life. From a relationship and communion point of view, the comments made about this character trait, some men continually walk around with insecurities that negatively impact the way that they relate in business, ministry, and marriage, also resonate with me. I can see how missing out on the positive affirmation of my father in my developmental years has, I guess, made it hard for me to be able to offer that same affirmation to my wife, for example, when I can sense that she needs it. It's that ability to offer another comfort through being actively present. I think, no woman, but I think every lady on the planet appreciates reassurance from their husband to feel safe and wrapped up in their husband's arms, and to be told that everything is okay. And it's that act of offering reassurance that has been a challenge for me, as I was never on the receiving end of it. And I never got to see my dad, for example, caress my mother or hold her like she was the most precious thing he had ever laid eyes on. I can tell you it has worked much the same way with my stepson, Ethan, in terms of achieving a real connection with him. The stuff you model in your head, but often fail to be able to translate in the world. It's really only been in the last few years that I've been able to tell Ethan how incredibly proud I am of him, that he's just this amazing guy, and I am just so excited to see his future unfold. And look, I know that Ethan knows this. Every time I've had these conversations with him, I know he sees and feels the emotion behind my words, and he knows that I mean them. And Ethan's got this wisdom about him. He's an old soul, and in many ways, he absolutely knows the reason why it's been a challenge to get to this point for me. And I know he'll probably watch this. He's followed my other podcasts. It gives me tips and tricks. And so I say directly to you, Ethan, mate, son, you've just got my utmost respect. I'm so proud of you. And I'll support your endeavours until I draw my final breath. And I'm so sorry for the many years I haven't been able to offer you that affirmation that I've just talked about. But I wrongly felt that role modelling the behaviours, of good work ethic, of putting in the hard grind, was good enough. But I tell you what, guys, it simply isn't. It requires real connection on a real level for the magic to be imparted and for it to be received. So Ethan, I just respect and I love you so fucking much. I also see how this kid is with our family and our friends, and he offers just these qualities of fathership in his relationships. People just relish to be in his company, and it makes me so very pleased. And I think it's a thing to say here at this point that offering the qualities of fathership that I've talked about doesn't require that the person is older than them. Ethan has, I will admit, Ethan has been a father to me as much as I've tried to be a father to him, that a man can offer the qualities of fathership to anyone, and that person on the receiving end will only be enriched and better because of it. And so, look, there's some more to cover and to talk about in this character trait. So let's press on. They never fully trust their abilities, and hence they don't always trust others around them to do the right thing by them. Now, when I look at my professional life up until now, I can loosely relate to these sentiments, but not completely. I would say that I have this underlying drive for perfection, and I am unrelenting in my self-abuse whilst pursuing these unrealistic targets. It's almost like I purposefully at times have set myself up to fail. And obviously this will be enough for me to say, fuck it. Not for me. It's too hard. I don't have the skill set for it. I'm not good enough. If I can't execute perfectly, I'm just not going to waste my time. There isn't any point. I hate feeling inadequate, but I'll often think about my inadequacies. It's like this catch-22. I think anecdotally, this is always why I've had this mega respect for fucking McDonald's. Every single experience with those guys is the same. It's safe. I know exactly what it will be, and there is a little room for any disappointment. It's a double cheeseburger, extra max onions, and max out the pickle every time. Highly organized, highly consistent, highly dependable. It needs to be perfect. It needs to meet my expectation, and that is what I strive for in the areas of my life. I can tell you, for example, KFC and the restaurant brands dynasty here in my country would just be a horrible place to work because they seem to have no pursuit of consistency. If anything, they are consistently horrible, and they just lose out on any credibility in my perfectionist view when stacked up against those golden arches. And so, look, I have a tendency to form a real scathing view of business when it isn't executed perfectly. Those brands can simply get fucked. Perfectionism, it's such a hard thing. I would say that for the most part throughout my 20s and in my early 30s, I had enough energy and enough gusto, what's the term, young, dumb and full of cum, to be relentless in my pursuit of perfection. And when I learnt my hand at a craft, I was generally all in or nothing, to the point of hyper focus at the exclusion of all other aspects of what was going on in my life. It's really, really tiring keeping up with those kind of efforts. Certainly not sustainable. Where outcomes didn't align to this image of perfection I'd crafted in my head, I become dismayed pretty quickly and move on to the next fascination in my life. Having spend a lot of time in kitchens chefing, I can tell you this search for perfection has deeply affected my enjoyment of food. If my wife watches this, she's going to be laughing. She knows exactly what I mean, and she thinks it's absolutely ridiculous, and it is. Every single item you cook has a right way and a wrong way of achieving the end result. I recall recently we were out to brunch, and it was a delightfully written brunch menu, and the menu said eggs Benedict with homemade saffron hollandaise. I think, great. That's novel and certainly going to be made in-house, but when it arrives, it's hollandaise straight out of a Tetra Pak, rich in seed oil, not an ounce of butter, and so the meal's pushed to the side. The outing's pretty much fucking ruined at this point. Waste of $20 as far as I'm concerned. What a bunch of useless cunts. All because I'm literally looking for that picture-perfect Eggs Benedict with that velvety hollandaise precisely garnished. It only exists in my goddamn mind. I say that any other person would have enjoyed the meal and the experience, but no, I had to form a scathing view of the fucking lazy chef and the state of affairs in the hospitality industry, where every cafe in the country, it seems, has to have a poorly executed Eggs fucking Benedict on the menu. There we go. You get the drift. Perfectionism, and if it is not attained, I'm generally not feeling too crash hot about things. So, where does this tendency of perfection actually come from, and where does the truth lie? And introspectively, it's a really hard question to try and answer. And I feel perfectionism is related to fantasy. Allow me to elaborate. Both Freud and Jung discuss this in their correspondence with each other, and Freud's work on the father complex. But put simply, without a father, I was left to imagine what my father may have been like. And I know my dad liked his booze, and was prone to get a little irie from time to time, and he probably had a whole bunch of other negative qualities, but the problem with the imagination and the father fantasy is that it tends to create what you most want, the perfect father image. Perhaps this becomes, the root of one's tendency to use imagination to mould unrealistic expectations of partners, of Eggs Benedicts, of professional and personal outcomes. The mechanism through which one's mind continuously reflects back at the past with a view of unrealistically perfecting a future that's quite simply just does not exist, while missing out on the adventure that ravages away relentlessly in the present moment. What are your thoughts? Give me a comment. On a lighter note, I read some thesis papers that suggested fatherless men are also more prone or inclined, may be the better word, to tackle DIY projects around the home without engaging a contractor or seeking the advice of an expert. Fucking A. Absolutely. If someone else can do it, I can do it. And I'll often proceed in isolation with my own plans, even if it makes more sense to get someone else to do it. I guess it just comes down to not trusting that someone else isn't going to try and rip you off or do a half-assed job. I'd rather be in control of the outcome. Now, the sense of inferiority, there we go. I'm not going to claim to be able to get on top of that word, folks, but this sense of inferiority causes them to try and hide their low self-esteem by projecting a masculine persona full of confidence, but inside their souls are always afraid. Now, this is the last part of this character trait of fatherless men. Again, I'm not going to fully relate to this, but I can certainly kind of relate. I've done a lot of public speaking in my years. Attended Toastmasters for public speakers for a long time, and I think many of my fellow Toastmasters would be absolutely shocked to hear me say that I have low self-esteem and deal with feelings of complete inadequacy and a sense of melancholy at times. And, funny because I do have very little fear of standing up and speaking in front of an audience, but I'm not necessarily the best person to take along to a networking group. What have I got to offer? I guess more than just the fatherless deal with similar feelings of anxiety when placed in social environments where interaction is an expectation. But if I were to freely and openly talk about my apprehension here, it's probably best summarized by a question I'd probably be prone to ask myself, what have I got to offer these people? I don't really fit in here. I feel inadequate, a little bit like an outcast, without any kind of analysis and just listening to my heart. It's that feeling of being the odd one out. Of that same feeling of being a young kid and feeling like the odd one out, of not having a father. Not having a father at all. It lies at the very center of those feelings of inadequacy. It's the same feeling. It's one and the same. And it's really hard to psychoanalyze yourself. Harder still to do it knowing that your reflections are undoubtedly going to be seen by folks, but judgments formed, sympathies offered. It's difficult to answer the question of what persona I actually portray to the world, and how I may be superinflating that to appear calm, relaxed, confident, when on the other flip of the coin and beneath an unexposed surface, there's just a whole lot of unresolved pain and insecurity around fitting in, and as I say, feeling like the odd one out. So I know to some extent there is a psychology of coming across like I've got it together to hide the fact that I really don't, I guess is the simple way of putting it. And how much, again, is related to being fatherless and not knowing Teddy Boy. Really, I can only offer my own subjective view, but it's certainly related to the third trait, which we'll get to in another podcast, and that's having this immense competitive drive due to making comparisons with the progress of and achievements of other men instead of celebrating them. But there you go. That's my round off of the first character trait, and I hope I've done that justice, and spoken from the heart and shot from the hip. I said I wasn't intending to offer a resolve, more than anything, just to get it off my chest, and know that there's probably thousands of people like me out there, going through a similar path in life, and just like I said at the very start, for you to know that you're not alone, and the feelings that have gone along with not having a dad in your life, whether it be from birth or from childhood, is a really profound thing for you to deal with, and certainly will become your life's work, as it has for myself. So we've got 7 more to go. If you've got some comments for me, some feedback, again, I would love to hear it. Please subscribe and like, and go on this journey with me. Tag your friends, if you've, and here's the thing, and here's where I'm going to finish. If you're a bloke, and a single woman raising a child at home, or one of your friends passed away and left a bloke being raised without a dad, to grow up without a dad, or if you're an uncle and you've got a nephew there that's in a similar circumstance. Let this be the motivating thing that makes you pick up the phone and say, "Kid, it's your uncle here. It's your mum's friend here, Bob. How's it going? Look, I'm heading out to my property, and I'm going to do some work on my land. I thought you might like to come out, maybe go possum trapping and stuff, and take the opportunity to offer those qualities of fathership to another man. Offer that quality of fathership, and positive affirmation to your friends, to your family. Build them up. Tell them that they are great. We don't do it enough. In particular in New Zealand, we like to rain on the guy that's successful, that's doing okay, because we've just got this streak of jealousy about us. But it doesn't need to be that way. Celebrate achievement. Stop thinking so much about the past, and about where you need to be in the future, and just take the time to enjoy. And I'm trying to do that as much as possible in my life, to enjoy close relationships with my sisters, to tell my wife that I love her, to be spontaneous. Something I need to do with Ethan. It's where we need to go and do more bushwalking together, and just enjoy those moments of life, because bang, they can be gone in an absolute flash. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Inspired Conversations with Craig. I appreciate you listening, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.